Welcome back to the UnloQt podcast. I'm your host, Sindano Nekundi. All your unlockers out there, today we got information, because information is gold, and that is what we bring you. Knowledge is power, and the person that is bringing you the knowledge of power today is a lawyer by the name of Henry Shimutwikeni. Welcome to the UnloQt podcast.
Thank you, Sindano. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. This is the first time we're interviewing a lawyer, and basically we just want to find out all the aspects that go into it and the advice that you can give to business people, as well as, just generally for the, people's knowledge when it comes to, aspects of law and justice, I suppose. But first, let's get into a bit of background into why you became a lawyer.
Thank you. So when I finished my grade 12, I wasn't really certain in terms of what I wanted to study.
Mm-hmm.
The parents wanted to lean me more towards medicine.
Okay.
I then took a gap year because I was unconvinced, and it's during that time that I actually decided I wanted to pursue something more in the social sciences. I then decided law, and I went to the University of the Free State and started my LLB there. Very interesting time at the University of the Free State. I think in addition to actually studying law, my time at the University of the Free State is what shaped what I did as a student, and also what I did immediately after I graduated. Yes, both inside and outside the classroom, but I think more outside the classroom than inside the classroom. Yes.
University of the Free State.
University of the Free State.
So, give us a little bit of insight into how it shaped you.
Okay. So when I went to the University of the Free State at the time, it was quite it was a very racially tense environment.
Mm-hmm.
Most of there was number one at the time, there was a division in terms of Afrikaans speaking, which would be predominantly white, and then non-Afrikaans speaking, which would be, or English speaking, which would be predominantly black students. So there was quite a lot of racial tension against the minority at the time, who were the black students, and that didn't settle quite well with me. So in as much as I was a law student, I ended up becoming an activist. I ended up becoming an activist, and not only an activist against that issue. Once you enter the space of becoming an activist, you generally start to criticize and try to correct anything which is wrong. So at the time, the students, my fellow students at the University of the Free State, felt it correct to elect me as the chairperson of the South African Students Congress branch, SASCO.
Okay.
Yes, and so in addition to studying, I was quite active on campus. Quite a lot of fun. Obviously, with student activism, it's serious but not too serious, but the issues obviously relate to enabling students to be able to be in an environment which is conducive to allow them to finish their studies.
Okay.
Some of my activities actually almost got me expelled from the university at the time.
Understandably.
Yes.
Because you're going against the system.
Yes. Yes, but the difference is, though, and I think that's the importance in life, really, of doing something that you believe in and doing it with passion. Because in as much as people might not like what you're doing, like your agitation, like your new ideas, like your innovation, they will respect your principle. And the reason I emphasize that is last year I was actually contacted by the alumni, and they asked me to become a council member of the university, which I currently serve as.
Council member?
Yes, as a council member of the same university which I agitated at the time as an undergraduate student. And when I sat down reflecting on it, I was like, but why? They've got so many students who are alumni who are in South Africa. Why do they contact me? I think
all the way in Namibia.
It's really purely because of the nothing more than the passion I displayed for what I believed in.
Yeah.
At the time. Yeah.
And that carries through to this day.
I think it carries through to this day. But obviously, number one, as an individual, you grow, and number two, you must always be cognizant of the environment within which you exist, and what it is that you are advancing, what it is that you are passionate about, and what it is that you want to change.
Okay, so then let's go into what is the sort of pillars that create your personal philosophy in life.
Yes, I think, look, when a person is born, you're born, and without much outside influence, the only thing you're going to want to do is survive. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? It means that you must breathe, you must eat, and you must drink water. And that creates energy, and you survive on to the next day. So I believe that one needs to exist beyond survival. You must exist, and you must be passionate about something more than day-to-day survival. That's the first thing. The second thing is that whenever something happens in your life, if it's good, we're always quick to celebrate and say, "Oh, I'm such a fast runner. Look at me." But whenever it's bad, we're very quick to blame someone else. I think it's very important to take control of everything that happens, both good and bad. If you befriend somebody, or you guys are busy with a business transaction, and they defraud you, the strongest way to think and deal with it is to say, "This is my fault because I allowed myself to be conned." And in that way, you strengthen your abilities to easily detect a con man the next time. But if you sit in that situation and you say that, "Oh, I was conned by a con man, it's the con man's fault," it's not the con man's fault, it's yours.
Yeah.
Because your mental state at the time allowed you to be conned, and you must improve it. Improve it, learn from people, read, or get conned again so you don't get conned again. But it's not the con man's fault.
Yeah.
The con man is a con man because society, unfortunately as it is, exists with such people. So that's the second one.
That's the snake to bite you.
Yes, yes. So that's the second one. And the other one is I think we'll come to it. I think it kind of slipped me. But those two are quite pivotal in terms of what I believe and what I advise people. I mean, advise people in terms of beliefs that can contribute positively to both your personal growth and career growth too.
So it's doing more basically for other people,
yes.
So living beyond survival.
Yes.
And then the second would be to take accountability for your actions.
Yes, take accountability for your action and your inactions, yes.
Interesting. Let's get into it. Why did you choose to help people? So by default, being a lawyer is helping people, or
yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
So why did you choose this career path? I mean, you mentioned that your parents wanted you to take a direction into medicine, but you then became an activist at varsity level and still do it in some capacities up to this day. So you have a very much a drive to help people. I would like to understand where that comes from and why.
I remember when I was in grade 12, I read, I think there are two books. The one I didn't read finished, because particularly at the time I wasn't too fond of religion. It was called Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah.
I browsed it, and I went to one, I think it was a presentation or something where it was being spoken about, and that's what I took from it, that you must live with purpose, you see. And then the second book, which I read and watched, is The Secret. I don't know if you've...
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I haven't read it though,
yeah.
But
maybe watching it is easier. Yeah. So I think very early in my late teens and early 20s, I think those kind of philosophies are what shaped me. And I think it came on too from when I graduated from university, because when I first started practicing as an attorney, at first I worked for a law firm. It's Fisher Quamby and Pfeiffer in Berg Street, a very, very good law firm. I then left shortly after getting admitted. I went to work for the Ministry of Health. Ministry of Health. I worked very closely, for all intents and purposes, like an assistant to the accounting officer, and at times also assisted the minister. And then I left that because
What was your biggest learnings from working in those two type of settings? You have a private sector and a public sector.
Look, I think, and this shifts the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more beneficial that I've done from a career perspective than having been working for government and having been so close to the epicenter or the machinery of government, because remember that government is the biggest mover and shaker in our economy, despite its ups and downs. Government borrows to boost our economy when things are low. So working at that level of government, and then at the same time interacting with business, it really gives a much. It makes it easier for me to advise businesses that deal with government, particularly when you know exactly, no, this will work, this won't work. Because a person says, I want to do this and this, but having worked for government, I'm easily able to tell you and say, no, do it like this, or don't do it like this, or forget about it. This is not going to work, or you're going to wait till So that really, I think it's in as much as the time that I spent there was quite short, I think it's one of the most valuable teaching periods that I've gone through as an adult.
That shaped you as a lawyer.
It shaped me as a lawyer too.
In order to help people, back to that. What? Some people say, when I help people, all I expect is a thank you.
Yes.
Yes, there is the money aspect and other benefits, but that thank you means a lot. Tell us, the impact that you've sort of had on people and how that has shaped you as well in turn.
Look, I think the thank you might not get. There's another philosophy called pay it forward. So one only hopes when you do assist somebody, even without the thank you, because you might not see the person again, that they pay it forward. That they remember and say that I too was assisted, therefore I must assist somebody else. And there's another, I don't know if you know the butterfly effect.
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of view it through that prism too. That you do a little bit here, and this person will do, and it will hopefully spread. I mean, obviously you will never see it, but you can only hope. It must spread.
I think that's a worthy cause. If you take it from that perspective.
Yes.
So in terms of the services that you offer, could you describe the types of lawyer services?
Yes. Right. That you do? So initially, when I started my own law firm,
and why did you start your own law firm? Moving out of a salaried paycheck.
Yes. I think look, that is a bit of a selfish decision, which came from independence. The ability to do what I want on my own terms. Because I remember at one time when I came back from university, we did a few things, 2015 or so, with a few colleagues, and then at the time, you're doing a few things which not necessarily related to your employment, but your employer will call you and say, "Oh, look, man, I'm reading the newspaper. What is this about?" And then obviously now you have to consider your employment, but at the same time you want to do this. You see, so it was really a shackles off kind of move.
Okay.
Yeah, to say that I want to be able to assist society, but at the same time I need to be able to do it independently of the shackles of an employer. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because having an employment is a privilege. Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons that moved me towards being on my own. Because also you must understand that when you exist within a particular law firm, the discretion is not always yours in terms of what kind of cases you want to take on.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I'm sure you guys have watched Suits and Boston Legal.
Yeah.
Look, it's not that dramatic, but it's more of a microcosm of that. But there's always a bit of influence from your seniors. So that's the kind of independence I wanted. So at the time when I started, I really started passionately with law in the area of human rights. Yeah, I was big advocate a few years ago against those many operations, the police brutality. Did a few cases here and there, very difficult to litigate against government. Number one, they've got all the resources, they've got all the time, so that's initially where I started.
Yeah.
And then look, I think it's, at the end of the day, my intention was always to assist, and then I started, slowly perhaps, it wasn't a deliberate decision, more, I think it was just a circumstance and perhaps transition and growth. Yeah, I moved more towards civil litigation, commercial litigation, corporate advice. And then I discovered that that's actually something I'm more passionate about. Particularly, I think, because I generally think very carefully before I take a particular decision. And areas of business, areas of disputes in that arena require a lot of thought, a bit of strategy, and tactics. And so once you put that together with the law and with litigation and with pre-litigation, if it is that litigation comes, it works out very well. So that's the direction I've steered into, it's the direction I'm passionate about, and it's the direction I'm into now.
So the services you offer now are sort of crafted along the journey?
Yes, they were crafted along the journey, yes.
Okay, as a business person, because we mostly also talk to SMEs and business owners and so forth, like, give us some tips in terms of how to, and I suppose scenarios as well, where you've helped businesses get out of legal situations.
Yes. Look, I think, let's look at a business. There's two. Now, if you look, for example, the way we interact with what you would call perhaps bigger businesses or bigger entities, and the way our society is set up. Because remember that as a lawyer, we respond to the economy. So the biggest players in our economy are insurance companies, they are banks, insurance companies, and also SOEs.
Respond to the economy, meaning?
Meaning that, remember that we solve problems, legal problems of business people within the economy. So what's happening is that business people are transacting within the economy, and when it is that they need the services of legal people, either putting together the contracts or solving the disputes, it's then that they call us the lawyers. I don't know if you follow.
In a sense that...
This is now from a commercial and corporate law perspective.
Yeah. Yes. So in a sense that the lawyer comes in to smoothen processes within the economy from a legal perspective.
Yes, from a legal perspective, from the very onset. For example, if you take, for example, DBN, all of the relationships between DBN and the businesses they are trying to empower are put together by a lawyer, because the lawyers look at the contracts. They are the ones who advise both parties. You know, that's what I'm trying to illustrate to you. So that's why I say that legal practice in the commercial and corporate space is responsive to. For example, we attended with some of my colleagues recently the hydrogen conference.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a presentation done by, I can't remember the lady's name, from the LAC. I do know her name, it's just failing me now. It was a presentation done by the LAC. And the presentation was that, do we have policy and do we have a legal framework to regulate this thing? You get it? Because it's coming.
To regulate hydrogen.
To regulate, obviously, look, the scientific part is complex. But do we have the policies and the legal framework or the regulations to regulate the space? You know, we've got the environmental management and all of those, but are they able to respond to this new direction that government is saying that the country is going to take? And the framework is important, because without the proper legal framework, you know, then you've got the Wild West, because anybody can do what they want with no rules, no regulations. You see, so that's, I'm trying to illustrate to you. So that is very broadly and very vaguely. I can go more specific into scenarios just to illustrate to you why I say that as lawyers in the who litigated that civil, corporate or commercial space, or we do contracts, are very responsive to what happens in the economy.
So when it comes to these new areas that come in, like hydrogen and so forth, so you're creating, I wouldn't say maybe the rules and the guidelines for which a company, if they were to enter that sector, they can abide by it in order to stay on the right side of the law?
Yes. So that would be in essence created by government. But and we're very privileged that our government is very active when it comes to when it comes to bringing up new policies, new regulations. It's very consultative. So when it is that it is done, it's done by government, passed either by parliament if it's an act, or by the minister if it's a regulation. But they're very consultative, so they consult all the sectors. So even with that particular area, they would consult all the sectors that would be interested or affected by such a new area. And I think and new areas are exciting. For example, if we look at the new oil discoveries, we're really going to have to relook at our legislation, our regulations, and our policies to say that, are we able to respond to not just the distribution, but the actual extraction and production. Look, it's fine.
So let's go into civil or legal situations for the average man on the street.
Yes.
What is your advice in terms of that? What is your advice in terms of giving advice to the layman's person?
I think a lot of and now I'm speaking more to our small, medium, and maybe slightly large businesses that are doing okay, or just trying to do the best that they can. Look, there's remember that one has to firstly remember the statistics. Well, according to South African statistics, apparently about 80% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. The statistics are somewhere there. Now, let's think about it. Why do they fail?
Why do they fail?
Why do they fail? They fail often. It's something perhaps which can't be determined by lawyers too much, which is cash flow. But at the same time, they also fail because some businesses are unable to probably understand and mitigate their risk. Understand and mitigate their risk. Now, you find, and a lot of the legal challenges that our small businesses face comes as a result of their relationships with lending entities. Either how the particular agreements were structured, or if not how the particular agreements were structured, how they respond to scenarios of default. You find some of our business people, and they're served with a summons. And as a lawyer, we know that a summons is a very, very serious document, which can lead to the attachment of your company's vehicles. And they look at it like any other invoice that came to their business, and they park it, And I think, and it's only later on and I think a lot of business people come too late. Come too late to lawyers. But obviously some are more vigilant, and from the very onset, when the financing agreement is coming into place, they then bring it to a particular advisor like us lawyers and say, Henry, assist me with this, man. What does it look? And I say, this agreement is great, but just remember that if you default, these people are going to take these things that you're building. And I have to be quite a little bit critical, particularly about some private equity firms and their aggressiveness towards their aggressiveness in terms of how they respond to the very same business people that they're trying to assist. We did see a downturn in the property market in the past few years. Look, I'm not an accountant or an economist. I can't explain why there was the downturn, but there was the downturn because of the influx to our offices by business people who were facing legal challenges arising out of that.
Arising out of defaults in the property area.
out of so what? Look, a traditional property development agreement is in Namibia, in Windhoek and some of the major towns is structured like this. The business guy gets a piece of land. After they get a piece of land, they want to build particular houses and sell them off to individuals. But more often than not, it's a lot of money that's required for that. So you would approach a financier, and in the past few years, some of the private equity firms pumped quite a bit of money into that, and the houses get built. So now the house is built, but then for some or other reason, which is beyond me as a lawyer, maybe maybe someone who's an economist can explain it. The houses aren't being bought. So now the house is not being bought. You've got a loan with Mr. X that you need to pay back. And the interest is running up, and Mr. X is knocking on your door. So I'm a bit critical, well, that's me as an activist lawyer speaking, to say that if it is that, that such institutions, such as these private equity firms, which a lot of times are actually funded with public funds, they should be able to restructure these particular agreements. So a lot of times, particularly a few years ago, we spent a lot of time arguing with financiers, not arguing, but trying to negotiate with financiers to restructure agreements, to say that, look, when the agreement was structured, it was like this. But we can all see what's happening.
Yes.
So let's stretch it a little bit for another 30 years, you know. The interest goes down and. Some financiers are responsive, some are not, and, you know, they tell the business people to go to hell, and they either go to arbitration or they go to court. But at the same time, to answer your question, I think it's important because you asked what advice do we have for business people. The biggest failures of business, from my experience, are issues which are related to, in Namibia, issues which are related to lending and the way agreements are structured. It's number one, prior to signing the agreement, get advice. Number two, the moment you start to feel that you're not going to honor the agreement, get advice. Number three, the moment that you get something which looks like it's going to become court-related or arbitration-related, get advice. Otherwise, your stuff, you're gonna end up with your things being repossessed and really the business causing more harm than good to you.
So let's get into some terms in the lawyer profession that people can become more familiar with, especially when they hear them and things that they possibly see in the newspapers and so forth. Let's start possibly with arbitration.
Okay. So the arbitration is basically a forum or a space where a dispute is adjudicated. So ordinarily what happens is that when two, and you find this again ordinarily in business transactions. So what then the parties put in their agreement, they put a clause and they say, in the event that for some or other reason we can't agree with each other, or we're having a bit of a struffle of sorts, we are not going to court, but we are going to have a private arbitration. And then they can either set out the arbitration, how it's going to happen, or they can say we're going to have an arbitration in terms of the Arbitration Act of 1965, I think. Now, yes.
Just the definition of arbitration.
Look, arbitration is a private forum where disputes are adjudicated, which is not
solved.
Where disputes are solved.
Okay.
Yes. Disputes are solved to avoid court, and often it's to avoid court because court is a public process, and anyone can come see. And now the brilliance of it is that court proceedings are even televised live, but arbitration is private. You guys choose the arbitrator who's going to arbitrate the dispute. And the dispute is solved there and then, and the parties agree that the decision of the arbitrator is final.
Is that normally where you get situations where they settle out of court? Is that similar?
No, it's not necessarily similar, because settling out of court is where the dispute is pending in court, and then the parties say, look, even though the matter is in court, let's have coffee and talk about this. Maybe we can cool down a bit. They then sit, they have coffee, they agree, then they go back and tell the court and say, court, now we're done here. We've settled out of court, you know. And then the court considers the matter as finalized. So then the parties then draw up another agreement and say, this is our agreement, let's leave the whole court thing. So sometimes, and unless you take the agreement to court, then the court sees the agreement, but you can simply tell the court and say, no, Honorable Judge, we're sorted. We've settled out of court. May this matter be considered as finalized. And the court need not know the contents of the settlement agreement if you don't want to provide.
And they'll just take that.
And the court will take that. Yes. But remember that here we're dealing with civil matters. We're not dealing with a criminal matter of somebody who injured somebody, who hit somebody. It's two or three individuals who went to court to ask the court to assist them to solve a dispute. While the court was busy trying to solve the dispute for them, they managed to have coffee and settle the dispute at the coffee table. They then go back to the court and say, court, look, we've managed to solve this dispute, consider it as finalized.
Let's get into what are the roles of the different courts. You have the Supreme Courts and the magistrates and
Yes, yes. So you have the magistrates court, and we've got quite a few magistrates courts around the country. They deal with, in very lay terms, more smaller disputes. For example, they are limited in terms of section, I think 25 or 29 of the Magistrates Court Act to 25,000 in terms of particular disputes.
Okay.
Yes, only disputes for...
It's pretty low.
It's pretty low, it's pretty low. I think it's about time that the Law Reform Commission, which is the body which is tasked with reforming our laws, perhaps should look into it. But yes, so those are limited to a few kind of actions, and from a financial perspective, 25,000. Then you have your regional courts, and then after your regional court, you have your high court. Now your high court is we say that it has inherent jurisdiction. By when we say it has inherent jurisdiction, it means that it can basically deal with pretty much anything. It's not limited in terms of the disputes that it can hear. It can hear pretty much all disputes, unless, of course, there's particular legislation which dictates and says that no, before coming to the High Court, first go to a particular forum, let's say the Labour Commissioner or what have you. Yes, but it basically has inherent jurisdiction to hear any particular matter. And if it is then that the High Court makes a particular decision that you're not happy with, you may then appeal that particular decision to the Supreme Court.
I've seen that.
Yeah, you may then appeal that to the Supreme Court. But once the Supreme Court makes its decision, you need to be content with it and go home, because there's nothing much you can do. That's the highest court of our country.
So you go there unhappy about the decision that the High Court gave you. You go to the Supreme Court. Do you now then go with, is it a new case now, or you bring the same information for them now to decide and overturn a decision?
Yes, you are appealing. You are appealing the decision that was made in the High Court. And you say, for example, Honorable Supreme Court, I'm appealing to you, and this I'm speaking very layman terms, I'm appealing to you because I feel that the judge in the High Court may have overlooked this part. You know, with respect to the judge, but the judge may have overlooked this part. And many a times, the court then will find in your favor, or the court will say, no, that man was, the honorable judge in the High Court was correct. So
the difference
and that is justice.
The differences now in terms of the judges.
Yes.
In America, they obviously have the jury.
Yes.
And the jury decides. Yes. How does that differ in Namibia, where now the judge decides, and the role of the judge in brief?
Our judges obviously go through quite a rigorous process before they are appointed.
Of course.
So we are very privileged right now that the judges that we have in Namibia are competent judges, and they deliver verdicts which are fair and which are just and which are based on law. And that is particularly because of the process that is taken to appoint judges. They are appointed by the President on the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission. So there is a proper process which is followed, which ensures that the matters which are heard in the High Court and in the Supreme Court are heard by competent jurists.
Can you perhaps describe some court, not cases, but obviously not naming people and businesses?
Yes.
But I'm looking now at your prosecutor and your defendant.
Yes.
Now these two parties go head to head. Is it always like that? Is that only in criminal cases where you have a prosecutor? Or I think that goes actually into the situation of why is it do people go to court? In criminal cases you can understand, yes, you need to go to court and be sentenced and judged, but in a business sense, how does a person find themselves in a court?
Oh, okay. So look, I think it's important first to understand the first scenario that you gave, which is the the criminal aspect of it, which we call criminal law, substantive and procedural. So what happens there is that a particular person commits a crime, and they are then brought before court. At the time they are suspect, because they are not yet convicted. Convicted means found guilty. They are suspected of having committed a particular offense. Now they can either be arrested or be warned to appear before court. Now when that particular person appears before court, in that particular courtroom, you'll find the presiding officer, who might be a judge of the High Court or might be a magistrate, depending on the severity of the offense. And then you'll find the prosecutor. Now the prosecutor is an employee of the Office of the Prosecutor General. In fact, they act on the powers of the Prosecutor General. They have a delegation of authority. So the Prosecutor General gives them a paper and says, I as the Prosecutor General am giving you this delegation to go prosecute this person on my behalf. So that person's task is to convince and lead evidence before the presiding officer, who's the magistrate or judge, as to why this particular person should be found guilty. Now, everybody is presumed innocent till proven guilty, and at the same time, everybody has a right to defend themselves and has a right to, obviously with certain limitations, be properly represented when it is that they are accused. That person now has a lawyer who's now defending them and saying that accused number one did not commit this offense because A, B, and C. Look, we've watched the movies, and that is how the arena plays out, and that is what we see when we go to court at times, or when we watch some of these dramatizations of court proceedings. So
how far off is the dramatizations from the real world, like Suits and like shows like Suits and Billions and so forth?
Look, I think generally, obviously, TV shows are there to entertain. But I think at the same time, when you have a prosecutor and a defense counsel, I don't think they are there to entertain. They are just really, really there to passionately either defend the particular accused person or prosecute them if it is. So if it is that it appears to be a bit dramatic, I don't think there's any intention of any competent prosecutor or defense counsel to be dramatic.
In real life, I suppose you do find situations which capture the attention of the nation.
Yes.
And people start to follow a legal story very closely.
Yes.
To try to find out what happens.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't now give you the other scenario. You were asking, how does then a business person find themselves in court? Look, so what then happens is that, let me give a practical scenario. Let me give a practical scenario. Let me use names. John and Tom. So John comes to Tom and says, look, John, I've got this site here, right? And I need trucks, I need trucks to move these goods from point A to point B. I need these trucks to move these goods from point A to B, but I don't have the trucks to move. So
the site to the port.
So can you apologies?
From the construction site or
to the port. Let's say to the port, from the construction site to the port. But I don't have the trucks. But Mr. Tom has the trucks. So Tom, can I use your trucks? Sure, man. Let's draw up an agreement. So they put up the agreement. Okay, fine. We'll pay this much per ton. This much per ton. Fine. Mr. Tom gives the trucks. Mr. John's things are going to the port, they're going to the port, and Mr. John is starting to become a wealthy man now. But he told Mr. Tom that, no, I'm going to pay you in 6 months, and then after that I'll pay you. 6 months come, nothing has happened. And here you are using your trucks up and down,
using petrol,
you have to pay your drivers. What do you then do? You start calling Mr. John is not answering his phone, And then next thing, the agreement gets terminated, or, you decide, I'm no longer giving you my trucks. Bring my trucks back. Next thing you go, he's got new trucks. What are you going to do? What do you then do? So now, that is now how it is that a business person finds himself in court.
Is it almost like, in a situation like that, what is the action taken? The legal action.
So what obviously what you would do is that you would approach approach a lawyer, and the lawyer would ordinarily start the process with addressing a letter to that particular individual. Say, look, my name is Winky D Incorporated. You know, I'm acting for Mr. Tom. You know, you've been using his trucks. Here's the agreement. You haven't paid him. I'm giving you 7 days. If you don't pay within 7 days, we're going to go to court. And in 7 days, maybe he pays, maybe he doesn't. After that, he issues a summons or an application or whatever. And now, if it is that John doesn't respond to that particular court document, it means that a default judgment will be granted in your favor. Once you get a default judgment means that, look, you're given a summons,
yes.
and then the summons says, hey, Mr. John, you know the whole story. You didn't pay this guy's money for the trucks. Come to court within 10 days to come answer this thing. And you don't answer, obviously there's a few processes after the other.
Yeah.
And you go back to court with your lawyer and say, look, we gave him the document, court, the guy's quiet. Maybe he doesn't understand, maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he doesn't respect the court. And the court says, you know, like, we don't...
we gave him time to come?
Yeah, then they give the judgment. So now you've got judgment. They say, I, Tom, have a judgment against John for, they say $10 for the use of the trucks. So then, when you have a judgment, you are then able to apply to get a writ of execution.
A writ of execution?
A warrant of execution or writ of execution. That document is the one that entitles you, with the assistance of the sheriff, to go to John's property, to his house, and attach what it is that you can attach to sell, to recover the money that is owed to you. At times you can even recover money from his bank account, if it is that you have the information in terms of where his bank account is and that it is money. So that is how business people find themselves.
And then John finds himself like, why are you taking my stuff?
Yes, so John will
now it's another
John
dispute
will be
again.
Having a braai, and there rocks up the sheriff coming to take his nice
repossession, basically.
His Haval, so people seem to drive Havals.
Yeah, seems to be the case. So in a situation like that, it almost sounds like fraud. You get situations like that of fraud and scamming. How do you avoid that?
Again, I think one has to do a proper due diligence. A due diligence is very, very important prior to concluding an agreement, particularly one of a great magnitude. You must do a due diligence in terms of the particular person particular person or business that you're transacting with.
Yes.
And lawyers can do that. I know that chartered accountants can assist as well, but lawyers can do a proper analysis for
ensuring that they are legit and have proper references.
And their references. That's what is the name? Is this person litigious? Because a lawyer can do a few searches and tell you, but this person has 20 pending cases of people that he hasn't been paying.
There's a backstory.
Yeah, this person has a few listings on one or other credit bureau for defaults. You know, this business that you're dealing with, you know that it was only registered last year. You know,
they claim to be in business for 5 years,
for 20 years. You know, so a proper due diligence can help you avoid that.
Yeah.
The second thing is also the way you craft your agreement. The way you craft your agreement, the way you craft your payment terms. You can put in particular cession clauses, but you can bond particular properties, you know. You can put in particular mechanisms to protect yourself in the event of such default.
Okay.
Yes. So due diligence and a proper analysis and very, very watertight agreement.
That's very, very interesting and valuable, I suppose, just making sure that everything is in order. The same way that you would do due diligence for your own company, making sure that the paperwork is in place is the same way that you make sure that the other person is honest on delivery.
Well, I wouldn't call it honest. I think honest is a bit extreme.
Extreme?
And perhaps offensive at times.
Really?
I think it's just because at times a person, you must remember that business is about risk. And you must mitigate your risk. So it's not necessarily that your due diligence shows that the other person is dishonest.
It goes back to your accountability.
Yes, it just shows that that particular person might have miscalculated, but calculate better than him, because you must be able to anticipate the failure of success of this particular venture. So it's not always dishonesty. It's not always dishonesty. Some people are just a little bit more ambitious. A little bit more ambitious than the reality.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not always a thing of honesty or dishonesty.
Let's go now into how you run your law firm. I suppose you have associates.
Yes.
How do you hire your associates? How do the mechanics work of a law firm and the different stakeholders?
Yes. Law firms are regulated by the Law Society of Namibia. Lawyers, all admitted lawyers, are members of the Law Society. They are regulated. There's particular ethics and standards that we have to uphold and abide to. So that is the most important thing that I think every person who interacts with lawyers needs to know.
Okay.
So the structure and form that a particular law firm takes from a compliance perspective is dictated by the Law Society of Namibia in terms of the Legal Practitioners Act of 1997. So that is now the framework. Obviously, the framework is in there, and obviously law firms differ. And you're asking me probably to explain how my experience is and how it is that it is run. Look, I think I never imagined myself. I think now, perhaps, including everyone, including the Nana office, I think we're maybe 20 something people in total. I think we're 20 something people in total.
It's a solid business.
It's
a business.
Oh, it's managing people. You don't really know all the people, and sometimes this is now from my own perspective. Dealing with people is very difficult. People are different. People have different principles. You try hard to instill or teach particular principles. People must have different principles. People must have different good principles. But and this is now strictly from a business perspective. Unfortunately, within any environment, you interact with people who are very good people, but have bad principles in terms of the work environment. And it's very, very difficult, particularly when like a firm like firms like ours, most of the people are young people. I have a principle of always saying that I don't like to hire anyone older than me. Yes.
Okay.
And that is
your company?
And that is particularly from an empowerment perspective. Yes, I think because the reason I say that is because of the reason I've taken that principle is the difficulty I faced when I first started litigating as an individual law firm owner alone. You know, you walk into a room and they say, "Oh, are you the lawyer?" And you say, "Yes, it's me." No, we were expecting, I said, "No, it's me. You just sit down and watch." So it always you get a lot of brilliant people, brilliant young people, and that is, I believe, that is my task to find them, and I think I've been doing a quite reasonably good job at it. Who are not being given that opportunity, particularly because of that label of youth and inability. Of course, there's nothing more brilliant like experience. But we live in a time right now whereby, look, if you wanted to learn something in 1992 as a lawyer, you would have to go into a library, and then you would have to page through all of those books and just looking for one particular court case. Those law reports. But now, and it could take you about 3-4 hours to find a few particular cases that you wanted, to find precedents, like you're saying. Yes, but now you can do it from the click of a button. And this particular trend, we're not seeing it only with lawyers. You're seeing it with doctors. You're seeing it with all other professional areas, because that's the brilliance of the access to information. And that is the information area that we're living in, because information is so easily accessible. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's in another area which is scientific. He's in the science area, and he was abroad at the time, and he says, "Man, at the time when I was doing my thesis or something like that, I would spend the whole day looking for this and this, I don't know what scientists do, formula. Yeah. And he says, now these bloody kids, they can get it in 5 minutes." So it's and that's the brilliance of it. And that's the brilliance, and that's why right now young people have that opportunity that people a few years ago did not have. So that's why I genuinely believe that once you identify young people, young lawyers with brilliance, who are displaying the correct worth work ethic, the correct ability to easily grasp what has to be grasped.
Yes.
They must be given the opportunity. They must be given the opportunity.
Opportunities at a 3-month probation, like us in the corporate world.
I don't think it's correct to discuss the nitty-gritties of employee relations, but yes, the opportunity. I think an opportunity is a small hole through which, if you pass, it brightens up everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
And do you have a mentor?
Yes, I do.
While mentoring others?
Yes, I do. I have a few good friends of mine who I consider my mentors. I think most of my, I think I'm a little bit, now that you mention it, I think it's quite odd. Most of my good friends, who I consider not good friends, who are my very people that I interact with a lot, both work-wise and socially, are people who are quite older than me, at least 10 years, 15 years.
Okay.
And the oddity is, though, that I only prefer employing young people. I think I'm doing a very Robin Hood task, in that I'm going to steal the knowledge to bring it to our young people. Yes.
I mean, we all have to get knowledge from somewhere,
Yes,
and knowledge is power.
Yes. You can only read so much, but experience is a very, very good teacher.
And talking to other people.
Yes, and talking to other people. I mean, if I think of myself when I started a few years ago, and I compare myself to now, there are some things which I can just look at, and without even thinking too much, I already know that this is that, and the correct legal advice to give, or the correct legal route to take.
So, people in general think that hiring a lawyer is expensive. You get high bills, and of course, if you're out of the legal situation, you're obviously, appreciative of the lawyer's efforts. But how can one afford a lawyer, especially for the middle income people, especially for that area? I mean, obviously, wealthy, rich people, you would expect them to have access to lawyers and so forth. But for middle income and I suppose lower income people who don't have access to that much funds, how is it that one can afford a lawyer, and what are the other avenues that a person can take?
Yeah, I think, look, you're right there. I think high legal costs, particularly for individuals, are a bit of a hindrance in terms of access to justice. That is true, because the procedural part of law is quite complex. The procedural part is quite complex. A person is allowed theoretically and both practically to take a case to court themselves as an individual. But I must be honest that it's extremely difficult for an ordinary layperson to just say, I'm going to court, the drafting of the documents, the processes. So a lot of times a person then tries to go to a lawyer, but the legal costs are quite high. There are some options, and I from an activist perspective,
yes,
I think we did try a few years ago, and we are still trying to establish it's still there. The only issue is access to funding. We established what we called the People's Litigation Center. It's a trust. It's still in existence, where we do now and then try to assist people pro bono. The difficulty we're facing is buying in terms of, because we're supporting it, we're funding it ourselves as a few lawyers. We have an office in Windhoek West, which is dedicated to that. But the difficulty is that obviously one needs to have a continuous access to funds to pay for lawyers, to represent some people. We can't represent everyone. So I think, number one, lawyers need to take initiative like that. I've seen there's a few initiatives to represent people, at least one or two, a few people for free in a year.
What they call pro bono.
Pro bono quota, From a moral perspective. Lawyers must up their pro bono quota. I saw recently in the media that there are efforts from government to try to, from the ministry to try to, get more buy-in into that. But it's really, really difficult. That's the first thing. Number two, we do have the Legal Aid Directorate. The Legal Aid Directorate is a directorate of the Ministry of Justice, which is funded by government, and its task is to assist people who are in certain legal situations and need legal assistance. So one can approach that directorate too.
Mention that name again?
The Legal Aid.
Legal Aid?
Yeah, Legal Aid.
Okay.
The Directorate of Legal Aid is Legal Aid, yes. So one can approach that directorate too, but obviously, because resources are always an issue, they too have an assessment criteria in terms of who it is they can assess and who it is that they can't. The nature of the case, your level of income.
Yes.
Yeah, they've got an assessment criteria. Another option that a person can consider is legal insurance.
Legal insurance.
Yes, legal insurance there's a few legal insurance firms in Namibia, without mentioning specific names, whereby you pay a particular premium per month, and the same way that you insure your car. You pay a particular premium per month. Ordinarily, it's not very high, either $100 or $200.
Yes,
and when it is that you encounter yourself in a legal quagmire, they can then come to your assistance by providing a lawyer for you. But all in all, I think the consensus, even amongst lawyers, is that we know that legal costs are a bit expensive. But I think the response to that must be holistic, both from our government, from us as lawyers, and perhaps a private sector too, in terms of trying to assist government or their institutions like Legal Aid. Yes.
For an individual now, I've made a certain amount of money, I'm now looking for a lawyer, I've maybe progressed in my career, I've made some investments, and now I need to protect my wealth. In your opinion, how can a lawyer help protect your wealth? And in that sense of, in that sense of having a lawyer that they can protect you from different financial situations.
Look, I think from an individual perspective, there's an area called estate planning. Estate planning, which basically, amongst other things, involves how one structures the assets that they have in order to protect them, perhaps from creditors, if it is creditors, or even obviously there's the natural things that happen, to protect them in the circumstances such as one's passing, or perhaps divorce with a particular partner.
Yes.
Yeah. From all those particular kind of scenarios.
Eventualities that might come.
Eventualities, and then obviously there's aspects of insurance, the kind of insurance, all of that. So there's a particular area. There's a particular area in law which is there to advise you in terms of how one should best structure
and set up a trust.
You can set up a trust, for example, but that is always very tailor-made depending on what the individual is, what it is that they want, what it is that they're trying to protect against, what it is that they're trying to achieve. So yes, lawyers can advise, and I really think those are the relationships that people should have with lawyers. I always say that it would be really nice if a person could go through their life and only really need a lawyer when they want one, and not when they didn't really want one but need one because of the circumstance. It's like a doctor, you see.
Yeah.
Just going there for a general health checkup.
Yes.
Am I okay? Am I fine? Yeah. But then you really, really don't want to go to the doctor when you when you're already unplanned, and those things happen. But unfortunately, those are the kind of professionals one needs in life. Yes.
Okay. As we conclude, I'd like to get into what your legacy will look like in the future years to come. Where do you see your firm going, and how you see your business sort of, I wouldn't say thriving, but how you will impact the community. Rewind.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get into how you see your legacy building in the next few several years, 10, 15, 20 years, and how you see your business growing.
Yeah, look, I think the growth of business, I believe, is a consequence of passion. The growth of business is a consequence of passion. Look, you can try to be well calculating in terms of this and this and that, but without passion for what you're doing, it's not. I believe it becomes a bit more difficult. So when you do something very, very, very passionately, the growth almost comes automatically. So I don't really think that far in terms of, because from my experience in terms of where I started to where we were, it has really been very natural in terms of growth. It has really been very natural. But for me, it's really just a passion of creating. And the difficulty now also is that, like all other graduates, there's a lot of graduates really that are unable to find jobs. So for me, true. Yes. So for me, I pride myself in waking up in the morning, and whether or not this person stays here for a year or 2 years, on having had that ability to provide that person with a job, whether it's the first job, the second job. And for me, that's something that I'm very passionate about and brings me a lot of pride. I always tell people when they're here, I said, look, man, I know that you don't have to stay here. In fact, I want you to come here, learn something and grow. I want to read about you. Yeah, I want you to come here, grow, develop yourself, and I want to read about you. And I want me to be sitting and to be comfortable knowing that I assisted this particular person in their path to where they want to go. There was one particular individual recently who came to me and said, no, I want to go work. I think I want to go work it's here and here. And I said, you want to go work here and here? And I said, no, it's fine. I know the particular person who was here, who used to work here. Let me give you their number. Speak to them so that they can give you pointers. So when you go there, you are prepared. And I said, don't go embarrass me also when you go there, because
you're coming from
a bad reflection
my firm.
That's the kind of perspective that I have, and I really so I want the firm to be a conveyor belt of brilliance.
Yes, and that talent goes into the market, and you have good lawyers.
Yes, I become very disappointed when it is that I encounter somebody who is either working in our environment or has left in our environment and they're doing terribly.
Yes.
It's like almost like I want to call them and say, look, what are you doing? We don't do that. Even though you're not here, it's like we don't do that here. Yeah. So for me, that is the passion in terms of creating the opportunity for people to, and also the brilliance of that. Obviously, lawyers make a little bit of money. That it has given me a little bit of space to do a bit of what some people call it philanthropy. I don't call it philanthropy. I just call it assisting people. So we do try to assist here and there without being specific. Students and some people, and that is something that also brings me a lot of joy. The ability to assist. The ability to assist.
At the end of your career, what do you want the people to say of you?
Don't have to say anything, I'm fine. No, they don't have to say anything. I'm good. I'm really, really good. As long as, I know. I haven't thought that far. They really don't have to say anything. As long as, for me, the most important thing is myself. As long as I wake up with myself, and I'm happy that I'm happy with what I did in the life that I lived. That's enough. What they say, you don't have to say anything. That's okay.
Just to you that you've lived an honorable life.
Yeah, that's important.
No, very interesting.
Yeah.
As we end off, are there any parting words that you would like to leave in from yourself? Any final words that you'd like to leave for our viewers?
Again, I think I'm just going to bring it back to what I said initially, in terms of what I'm really, really passionate about in terms of how a person should approach life. Accountability, accountability, accountability. Everything around you, you have control over it. There are obviously a few things, the 5% that you can't. But the majority of the things around you, you have control over. Don't blame anyone for what happens in your life, because the moment you start blaming people, it means that you don't have control and you have the inability to determine what happens in your own life. That's very, very important. That's very, very important. And the second and the last thing is passion. You must find something to be passionate about. Find something to be passionate about. If you're doing something, do it with passion. And also, here's the thing. On your journey to finding what it is that you are passionate about, whatever you are doing, do it with passion. The mistake that people make at times is that they've got this dream of where they want to be. And because they want to go where they want to be, they forget where they are, which is a step by step by step. When you are doing something, when you're given that opportunity, do it with all the energy, all the passion. Your passion might be there, or you might find it. So whatever you do, do it with passion. Don't do it half-baked, because the next thing you are going to do it half-baked, and you're going to be half-baked till the oven switches off, and then there's nothing. So whatever you do, give it your all.
Powerful words and advice from our guest, Henry Shimutwikeni. We appreciate it very much that you are on our podcast, sharing these insights, this information, especially from a legal perspective. And I think it is something that people can, go look further into. I know a lot of people would be very much interested in hearing, the advice that you gave today. And that's our mission basically here on the UnloQt podcast, is to provide you information that can provide value to you in your life in one way or another. So yeah, if you've learned something today, do subscribe, do like the page, and if you've learned something today, it's only towards your benefit. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next time.